It all began when I was 7. My family was ordinary, living a life of quiet routines. My younger brother, Ethan, and I spent our days playing in the backyard, while Mom, Sophia, juggled a part-time job and household duties. Dad, Adrian, worked long hours, often returning home late, his presence more of a fleeting shadow. Life was simple until that day. I remember Mom's voice calling me urgently from the front door. "Chloe, come here. You need to hear this." She was glowing, her hands tightly clutching Ethan's. I ran to her, confused but intrigued. She knelt down, her excitement barely contained. "Your brother," she said, her voice trembling, "is a musical genius. His teacher says he has perfect pitch. Do you know how rare that is?" I didn't fully understand, but her enthusiasm was infectious. From that moment, everything changed. Ethan's music lessons became the center of our world. Mom quit her job to focus entirely on his burgeoning talent, transforming our home into a mini studio, complete with a piano, microphones, and stacks of sheet music. She poured her energy into managing his schedule, from daily lessons to weekend competitions. Ethan thrived under her guidance. His voice, angelic and pure, captured the hearts of everyone who heard him. Soon, he was winning local contests and gaining recognition beyond our small town. Mom was ecstatic, her pride palpable in every word she spoke about him. "My Ethan is going to be a star," she'd say, her eyes shining with dreams of his future. But as Ethan's star rose, I felt myself fading into the background. Mom's attention, once shared between us, now seemed solely reserved for him. My achievements, a high grade on a test, a drawing I worked hard on, were met with quick, distracted praise, her focus always drifting back to Ethan. Dad, meanwhile, remained distant. His long work hours left him too exhausted to engage in the growing complexities of our household. When he was home, he buried himself in the garage or sat silently in front of the TV. He seemed content to let Mom handle everything, including the growing divide between us. By the time I turned 10, I had become self-sufficient. I made my own meals, completed my homework alone, and learned not to seek validation from my parents. The sting of neglect became something I carried quietly, finding comfort only in books and my visits to Grandma Helen's bakery. Unlike Mom, Grandma saw me, not just as Ethan's sister, but as Chloe. "You're sharp and resilient, my dear," she'd say while teaching me how to knead dough. "Don't let anyone make you feel less important." Her words became a lifeline. While Ethan basked in the glow of Mom's undivided attention, I clung to the small affirmations that reminded me of my own worth. Little did I know that the quiet strength I was building would one day carry me through challenges far greater than I could imagine. As I grew older, the gap between Ethan's world and mine widened like a canyon. He was the golden child, showered with endless praise and opportunities, while I navigated life quietly in his shadow. Mom's life revolved around Ethan, his lessons, his performances, his future. I became the afterthought, the one who could manage on her own. And manage I did. Books became my refuge, my escape from the relentless comparison. I'd lose myself in stories of adventure and resilience, imagining lives far removed from my own. At school, I gravitated toward a small circle of friends who offered me the camaraderie I lacked at home. We spent afternoons in the library or the park, laughing and sharing our dreams. With them, I felt like an equal, not someone constantly overshadowed by another's brilliance. The contrast in how Ethan and I were treated was stark. While I took the public bus to our local school, Ethan was chauffeured to a prestigious academy, renowned for its music program. Mom fussed over his uniform, packed gourmet lunches, and often accompanied him to ensure he had everything he needed. For me, there were no such rituals, just hurried goodbyes and the reminder to be home on time. Yet, my saving grace was Grandma Helen and her quaint bakery on Maple Street. Every day after school, I'd head there, the scent of fresh bread and pastries wrapping around me like a comforting hug. There's my hard worker," Grandma would greet me, her warm smile a balm to my weary heart. Helping her wasn't just a chore, it became a source of pride. I'd clean counters, arrange the display, and even take over the cash register during busy hours. For the first time, I felt valued, not for someone else's achievements, but for my own contributions. "You're a natural, Chloe," Grandma would say, her eyes twinkling. "This shop wouldn't run half as smoothly without you." Her words filled a void I didn't realize had grown so deep. Unlike Mom, who saw my independence as convenience, Grandma saw it as strength. She paid me a small wage, which I carefully saved, knowing I'd need it for something important one day. Her encouragement and belief in me were the only anchors keeping me from drifting entirely into obscurity. Meanwhile, Ethan thrived under the spotlight. He performed at recitals that drew large crowds, his name regularly appearing in local newspapers. Mom displayed his trophies prominently, her pride evident in every word she spoke about him. "He's destined for greatness," she'd often say, as if the rest of us were mere spectators in his journey. Though I clapped and cheered for Ethan at his performances, a pang of jealousy always lingered. It wasn't his fault, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being forgotten, a supporting act in someone else's story. Yet, in the quiet moments at Grandma's bakery, I began to realize that my worth didn't depend on anyone else's recognition. Slowly, I was learning to define my own path. Ethan's success continued to soar, and with it, the dynamics of our family shifted completely. What little balance we had before was now gone. Mom's every waking moment was consumed by Ethan's career, his rehearsals, competitions, and the constant stream of interviews and auditions. Our home transformed into a hub of activity, bustling with music coaches, photographers, and admirers who all came to witness the prodigy in action. I was there too, but invisible, my presence acknowledged only when absolutely necessary. Mom poured her energy and finances into Ethan's success, without hesitation. She traveled with him to music festivals, booked private instructors, and ensured he always had the best instruments and outfits for his performances. To her, everything else, including my small triumphs, seemed trivial. When I proudly showed her an essay I had worked hard on or shared news of an award I'd won at school, her responses were distant, almost mechanical. "That's nice, Chloe. Good for you," she'd say before rushing off to deal with Ethan's next big event. Even Dad, who had always kept his distance, now seemed to find solace in focusing on Ethan's growing fame. He rarely spoke to me beyond the occasional "how was school," and was more often than not absorbed in work or the television. The little recognition I'd once received from him faded entirely as he, too, succumbed to the gravitational pull of Ethan's talent. At school, I maintained good grades and even joined the debate club, hoping to find a space where I could shine in my own right. Yet at home, my achievements felt meaningless. The family's conversations revolved around Ethan's upcoming auditions and the possibility of him attending a world-renowned music academy. My efforts to be seen, to matter, fell flat against the ever-growing wall of their expectations for Ethan. I still helped at Grandma's bakery, where I felt a flicker of purpose. "You're doing great, Chloe," Grandma would tell me as we kneaded dough together. But even her affirmations couldn't completely drown out the feeling of being sidelined. The gap between Ethan and me wasn't just about attention. It was a chasm carved by our parents' choices, one that left me grappling with my place in a family that seemed to have room for only one star. Ethan's audition for the prestigious National Youth Choir was the event that seemed to turn our household into a pressure cooker. Mom was elated when the invitation arrived, a handwritten letter from the choir's director, no less. She could barely contain her excitement, waving the letter around as though it were a golden ticket. "This is Ethan's chance," she declared. An opportunity like this could set him on the path to international stardom. Her excitement was short-lived, though. As we sat around the kitchen table that evening, planning Ethan's trip to New York, the costs quickly added up: flights, hotel accommodations, new performance attire, and fees for the audition itself. "It'll be tight," Mom admitted, her voice tinged with worry. "But we'll manage." Dad's expression darkened. "Leah, we're already stretched thin," he said, his voice low but firm. "We can't keep draining our savings like this." "This is for Ethan's future," Mom snapped. "How can you even hesitate?" Their argument didn't end there. That night, As I was getting ready for bed, I heard their muffled voices from behind their closed bedroom door. I crept closer, straining to hear. "We've barely saved anything for Chloe's college," Dad said, his frustration evident. "What are we supposed to do when she needs our help?" "She's resourceful," Mom countered. "Chloe will figure it out. She always does." Those words stung. I felt a lump rise in my throat as I quietly backed away from the door. It wasn't just that Ethan was the priority. It was the assumption that I didn't need, or deserve, the same level of support. Determined to prove them wrong, I threw myself into saving for college. Grandma offered to pay me a proper wage for helping at the bakery, and I began tucking away every dollar into a small ceramic piggy bank she'd given me years ago. Every coin, every crinkled bill felt like a step toward securing my future, independent of my parents' support, or lack thereof. Months passed, and the tension at home didn't ease. Ethan's audition came and went, and while he dazzled the judges, the financial strain left its mark. I tried to stay focused on my goals, keeping my piggy bank hidden away in the corner of my closet. One day, after returning from Grandma's bakery, I decided to count my savings, eager to see how much I had accumulated. But as I picked up the piggy bank, something felt off. It was far lighter than it should have been. My heart pounded as I shook it, only to hear an eerie silence where the jingle of coins should have been. Frantically, I smashed it open, and my worst fears were confirmed. It was empty. I sat there, stunned, a mix of disbelief and betrayal washing over me. Who could have taken it? My mind immediately raced to Mom. Had she taken my savings for Ethan's audition expenses? The thought made my stomach churn. I confronted her that evening, my voice shaking with anger. "Mom, did you take my savings?" She hesitated for a moment too long, her expression giving her away before she finally admitted it was for Ethan's trip, Chloe. "We didn't have another choice." "You stole from me," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but laced with hurt. "Don't be so dramatic," she snapped. "It's all for the family, for Ethan's future. You'll understand one day." But I didn't understand. All I felt was the sharp sting of betrayal. My hard-earned savings had been taken without my consent, and with it, any lingering hope that I could rely on my parents. That night, as I sat alone in my room, the weight of my family's choices pressed down on me, leaving a hollow ache in its wake. The day my college acceptance letter arrived was bittersweet. I had been admitted to the state university to study economics, and I'd secured a partial scholarship. While the scholarship felt like a victory, it didn't cover everything. There were still tuition fees, textbooks, and living expenses to consider. Determined to make it work, I approached my parents one evening after dinner. "Mom, Dad," I began, clutching the letter tightly, "I've been accepted into state university. I got a scholarship, but I'll need some help with the remaining costs." Dad glanced at me over the rim of his newspaper, his brow furrowed. "That's great news, Chloe," he said, though his tone lacked enthusiasm. "But you know things are tight right now." "Tight?" I echoed, my heart sinking. "What about the college fund you saved for me?" Mom, busy clearing the table, barely looked up. "We used most of that on Ethan's music school. You'll have to figure it out, Chloe. You're resourceful." The familiar sting of their words hit me hard, but I managed a stiff nod and excused myself. Later that night, as I lay in bed, the hollow ache of disappointment settled in. It was clear that any hope of financial help from them was futile. Still, I refused to give up. I picked up extra shifts at Grandma's bakery and even landed a part-time job at the college cafeteria. Every dollar I earned went toward my growing list of expenses. Grandma supported me as much as she could, her unwavering encouragement a lifeline. "You're going to make it, Chloe," she'd say with conviction. A few months into my first semester, Mom showed up unexpectedly at my apartment. She looked anxious, her hands wringing nervously. "Chloe, I need your help," she said, her voice trembling. "There's an emergency, and I need to borrow some money." I hesitated but ultimately relented, transferring a significant portion of my savings to her account. "It's for something important," she assured me. "I'll pay you back as soon as I can." Weeks passed, and my bank account dwindled under the weight of tuition and rent. When I reached out to Mom for repayment, her tone shifted. "Chloe, it's family money," she said dismissively. "You're not in dire need, and Ethan's future requires sacrifices." Her words struck like a slap. I realized then that the emergency had been another one of Ethan's music ventures. The betrayal cut deep, and for the first time, I felt an unrelenting anger simmer within me. With Grandma's encouragement, I sought legal advice. "This isn't just about the money, Chloe," she said firmly. "It's about standing up for yourself." I filed a case, armed with bank statements and text messages that clearly showed Mom's deceit. The court proceedings were surreal. For the first time in months, I faced Mom, her expression a mixture of defiance and anger. Ethan sat quietly in the back, avoiding my gaze. My lawyer presented the evidence, and Mom's fabricated story of a family emergency quickly unraveled. The judge ruled in my favor, ordering Mom to repay the money with interest and cover my legal fees. Though I'd won, the victory felt hollow. The fallout was swift and brutal. Mom turned to social media, painting herself as a victim, a mother betrayed by her ungrateful daughter. Relatives who had only heard her side of the story bombarded me with messages of anger and disappointment. "You've disgraced our family," one aunt scolded. "How could you do this to your mother?" Despite the backlash, I stood firm. Grandma's unwavering support kept me grounded, her voice a constant reminder that I had done the right thing. "Let them talk," she'd say. "The truth will always come out in the end." Though the familial bonds were shattered, I felt a newfound strength. I had fought for myself and my future, and no amount of criticism could take that away. Several weeks after the court ruling, I received an unexpected call from Dad. His voice, hesitant but sincere, startled me. "Chloe, can we talk?" he asked. "I've seen your mother's posts, but I want to hear your side of the story." We met at a small cafe near my apartment. The conversation, awkward at first. Slowly, I shared everything. The years of feeling overlooked, the sacrifices I'd made, and the betrayal that led to legal action. Dad listened quietly, his face clouded with regret. "I failed you," he admitted, his voice heavy. "I thought providing financially was enough, but I ignored what was happening at home. I let your mother take the reins, and I see now how much you've suffered because of it." His words stirred a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, but also a flicker of hope. For the first time, Dad wasn't distant. He was present, acknowledging the pain I had carried for so long. Determined to make amends, Dad began reviewing the family's finances. What he uncovered shocked us both. Mom had been siphoning money from their joint account for years, funding Ethan's pursuits while neglecting household expenses and even taking out loans in both their names. "I should have paid more attention," he said, shaking his head. I trusted her blindly. The revelation left him furious, but resolute. He filed for divorce, determined to start fresh and support me in ways he hadn't before. Though it didn't erase the past, Dad's apology and actions marked the beginning of our reconciliation. For the first time in years, I felt like I had a father who truly cared. Together, we began to rebuild the relationship we had both longed for, but never knew how to pursue. The news of Ethan's vocal injury arrived like a thunderclap, shaking the fragile foundations of our family. During a performance atop a chilly mountain, he pushed his voice too far, resulting in a severe throat infection. Despite receiving the best medical care, the damage was irreversible. Ethan could no longer sing. Mom's world crumbled. The sun she had built her life around, her shining star, had lost his brilliance. The day the doctors confirmed Ethan's condition, Mom locked herself in her room, and the house fell into an eerie silence. Over the following weeks, she became unrecognizable, disoriented, mumbling about wasted potential and shattered dreams. One evening, her despair boiled over into hysteria, and neighbors called for help. She was admitted to a mental health facility, diagnosed with a severe nervous breakdown. Ethan, burdened by guilt and grief, spiraled into depression. For months, he withdrew from everyone, drowning his pain in alcohol. Dad and I tried to pull him out of the darkness, but progress was painfully slow. Finally, after months of therapy and sobriety meetings, Ethan began to emerge from the shadows. One day, over coffee, he said, "I can't sing anymore, but I can still teach. Maybe I can help others find their love for music without the pressure I felt." It was the first time in years that I saw a spark of purpose in his eyes. Ethan enrolled in a teaching program, eventually becoming a choir teacher at a local school. "This is my second chance," he told me with quiet determination. Though life had taken an unexpected turn, Ethan's journey toward healing brought a sense of closure. His redemption proved that even after fall, it's possible to rise again and forge a new path. Looking back, I see how the fractures in our family shaped us all. Ethan found purpose beyond fame, teaching others to love music without the weight of expectation. Dad stepped up, finally becoming the supportive father I'd always needed. Even Mom, though broken, began her journey toward healing. As for me, I discovered my own strength, carving a path built on resilience and self-worth. Life's challenges taught me that growth often comes from pain, and while the scars remain, they remind me of how far I've come. In the end, I emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever comes next.